So you married the first girl that you dated.
Totally. Mm-hmm. At the time when I brought my wife around my family, it was just like World War III. They didn't know what was going on. Ooh, we encountered a lot.
There are ways to support the community, even if you're not, and just be a friend.
Sometimes I don't want to be an advocate. Sometimes I don't want to teach anyone about being gay and being a lesbian that day. I just want to get the vagina checked out and walked out. We encountered a lot of microaggressions.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember specifically while my wife was getting prepped for her C-section and they were about to give her the spinal, the anesthesiologist, he looks over at me and he looks over at her and he's like, "So what are y'all, sisters or something?"
What kind of pressures or challenges did you go through that you can make them aware of that, like, you were like, holy shit?
Oh, my goodness.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to the OnlyMoms show. Today, we have Jamilla Svansson-Brown on the podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let me tell our guests a little bit about you before we dive in. So Jamilla and her wife, Q, are a two-mom family raising their daughters, Harper, who is 6, and Holland, who is 3, in Atlanta, Georgia. They create relatable and funny content about relationships, marriage, and motherhood. They have powerful storytelling capabilities and a familiar approach with their audience that allows their raw and relatable content to go beyond surface level. They have been featured in Essence, Oprah Magazine, and Gay Parent Magazine. You guys are rock stars, okay?
Thank you.
I have to say, and I told you this earlier, but you are my first lesbian on the show. So,
I love that. I love it.
So this is a really important conversation.
Whew, no pressure.
I know, right? Just like little light work.
Yeah, just light.
I know. But before we get started, we are sponsored by Mom Juice. So I would love to do a little toast to you in that bomb bio and get you trying our rosé for the first time.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
I'll try after you.
All right.
I need your full reaction.
This smell, number one, it smells amazing. Okay. Oh, this is good.
Oh, she likes it.
I love it.
Are you a rosé girly?
I'm a rosé girly. What bottle do I get to take home?
You could take them both if you'd like.
Love it. Thank you.
What else do you drink? Do you drink white?
I drink white. I drink rosé, and then I'm also a tequila girl.
Okay, well, I don't have tequila.
That's okay.
So I have Sauvignon Blanc and rosé that will satisfy two of those three desires.
Love it.
Yes.
That's
okay,
perfect.
well, I'm glad that you have a nice drink so we can get rolling. So I want to dive in to marriage. And I think that is something that you guys are so comfortable talking about, that people that have not found you on the internet yet, or, newly gay couples, they need this information. And the first topic, especially being OnlyMoms, that I want to discuss is not just for gay couples, but when your wife was carrying Harper, one thing that you mentioned is that you felt like you didn't truly connect until Harper got here, right? Whereas she was experiencing this connection for 9 months prior. And that's something that a lot of husbands struggle with, that they don't realize they're struggling with. So I wanted to talk about your experience there. And then I'm sure it changed once you were pregnant.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Okay.
So what I noticed is that just because I was coming across so much content, especially in relationships with men and women, where you have women discussing the disconnect once they have a baby. And it made me start thinking about when my wife was pregnant. When she was pregnant, her life immediately changed when that stick said positive. Her life changed, her appetite changed, her body changed. For me, everything was normal. My immediate thought was, I have a family, I need to make money. So it made me want to work more and work harder. And it made me realize how that was such a disconnect, because my wife just wanted me home and wanted me to understand what she was going through. So of course I was reading to Harper when she was in the womb. I was at the doctor's appointments. I'm very type A, what is going on here? But what I realized is that my wife was already developing that relationship in the womb. So she was holding her baby every single night. It was her baby until Harper was born, and Harper became our baby. Because once Harper was born and my wife had an emergency C-section, she was out of it once she gave birth. So my first thought was, I'm now responsible for two people. My heart is now split in two different ways. So my wife probably had that realization 8 months prior. Me, that realization was once that baby was in my head and we went to the NICU and they were asking me all these back-to-back questions, I realized forever and ever, for the rest of my life, I'm going to be not divided. My heart grew, but I have two people I have to take care of now.
Yeah. Once you became pregnant and you went through your journey carrying a baby, are there things that you wish that you would have done differently while Q was pregnant?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Not so much when she was pregnant, but when she was trying to conceive and she was going through those doctor's appointments and she was going through having to get shots and the disappointment of not being pregnant again and again. She attempted 5 times.
Wow.
So that part I never understood because in my head I was thinking, we just have to try again. We just have to try again.
Right.
I'm very resolution oriented. And of course, my wife in that moment, you can't ask anyone to be anything else but understanding of what's going on in their body. So when I was pregnant, I'm pregnant during COVID. I'm like, oh, this is not just a baby. You just grow and you pop out. My whole body is changing. Everything, even how I smell, changed.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And before I was just very much obsessed with the corporate ladder. I need to get to where I need to go to so that I can take care of my family. It was that realization that it's not about the money. It's not about how much I can do, what my title is. It's about my family and the time that I'm at home. And unfortunately, I was very thankful to have that realization. A lot of men wouldn't have that realization because they don't have the opportunity to get pregnant.
I almost envy you guys in a way because I would totally have another baby if I wasn't the carrier.
If you could share the load.
Right. It doesn't mean that like I won't have, like I know I could adopt or whatnot. But like if he could carry the baby, I would do it right now.
1,000%.
Yeah. Like
after pregnancy, I was like, wait, women do this multiple times?
Over and over.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And it's just like the career pause, all of it is so much. And it's not that I didn't enjoy pregnancy, but it was a little bit inconvenient.
Yeah. And it was all encompassing.
Yes.
I thought about my pregnancy 24 hours a day, every day.
Yeah.
While pregnant.
Welcome to season 2 of OnlyMoms. And you know I can't kick things off without a little treat from my favorites. So, if you're new around here, let me fill you in. 4 years ago, with my amazing business partner, Kristen Taylor, I co-founded Mom Juice. We're all about keeping the bullshit out of wine, literally. We're gluten-free and vegetarian. We also practice ingredient transparency by putting all of our ingredients on the back of the bottle. I know you might be giggling, but not all wine is vegetarian, okay? So you might just be drinking fish bladder, but that's none of my business. Here's the fun part. As your OnlyMom sponsor, I'm here to hook you up with 20% off your next order. Just head over to momjuicewine.com and use promo code OnlyMoms to go and treat yourself. You deserve it. It sprung on me to ask you that question just because I know that I've had some girlfriends that had gotten pregnant way before I had gotten pregnant. And sometimes I do think like if I could go back or even just writing them a letter now that I am a mom and I've gone through it and I've seen how they've supported me, like, I'm sorry I didn't take it as seriously as it was. Right. And I get that it wasn't intentional, but like where I was in my space, I didn't know or understand.
You weren't there.
Yeah. And so I found that very interesting in you guys' dynamic. Another thing that you guys had brought up in conversation that I thought was so nice is 2 pieces of advice or like your most important aspect of marriage. One of those is choosing to show up every day. And that's hard.
Yes, it's hard and it's big.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are ways that you choose to show up every day? Like, what does that look like in your household?
So first I have to say I'm a Leo.
Right.
Let's start off there. So I get very self-involved, very much like, okay, what needs to be done? What's my schedule? Who needs what, where? So it's kind of like making sure I'm listening for the spaces and the opportunities that my wife is saying, I need help or maybe this needs to be done differently.
Yeah.
Because me, I get stuck on a schedule. That's what we're doing.
Right.
But I have to
I'm
make
a Sagittarius, so we're very much
By your
the
side.
same, right? Like we get along really well. I can see how it's not that I'm not trying to be emotional.
No.
But I am just trying to keep that shit moving.
I got things I got to do.
All the time.
I have to schedule my emotions between like 8 p.m. and 8:30 p.m.
And yeah.
That little window.
And
That's it.
And if we run over now,
I'm charging you overtime.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I like that. I think that learning to be still or forcing, checking in with the partner is a good one because it forces you to slow down.
You have to slow down and make sure I'm listening. And that also helps with the kids too, because growing up, it was just very much, you just do what your parents tell you. If your parents tell you what to do, you're going to do it. No, my kids have opinions, feedback, all day long.
Not the feedback.
Yes. Mama, this food is disgusting.
Disgusting?
Disgusting. Thumbs down.
Thumbs
I
down.
mean, so I have to allow space
Right.
in my head, in my schedule, in my time to make sure I'm hearing that feedback from everyone in my house.
I'm sorry about that one.
Yeah, it hurt.
Yeah. That one's tough. They really don't.
They don't care.
They don't care.
No.
You guys call them like you're their staff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
They manage
yes.
everything.
The way that they direct me around the kitchen, Mama, I'm ready for my milk. I'm sorry, I didn't know I had a name tag on. We at a restaurant. What's going on here? Yes. So.
Oh, the second thing that was most important on you guys' list is giving your partner a space to change.
Yes, that's huge.
And I noticed this with my girlfriends that have been in relationships now for some time. That is a hard adjustment.
Yeah.
But you have to do it. Forever is a long time. And you're not going to be
the same people. Yeah, people change. And then when you add the dynamic of my wife and I, it will be 10 years that we've been sharing our lives across YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. People get attached to an entity. They get attached to us together. You have to make sure that also doesn't bleed over into real life, because we're two very separate people, but we've come together and chosen to have a family together. That doesn't mean that she no longer has separate interests or that I no longer have separate interests. So it also means that when she's telling me she's interested in doing some activities, my wife, she walks balls. So she's a part of a family. That's very important for her. That's something that she gets to do all on her own outside of her family. And we say that's important in theory, but do we give enough time and space for that to actually be done in real life?
Yeah. And it's hard because you have to create time.
Yes.
When you have schedules like you do, and you have to pick and choose what you're, showcasing to the world and what you decide to keep private, and it's like those intimacy boundaries, and then you've got the kids and you've got all the things,
my goodness.
You can say all day that that's important to your wife, but like, are you really giving her an area to exercise that importance?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so that's so important because we've been together. I met her when I was 22.
Wow.
And now I'm 35.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So we've gone through a lot of changes.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had the biggest surgeries together. Both of us had C-sections. We both had preeclampsia. We bought homes together. All of these experiences, we've buried family members together. These experiences change. You change who you are. You add social media to it and a lens and a camera. All of that impacts the day-to-day. So I have to always remember, like, this is the person I chose to do life with. So I have to make sure she's 100% happy and that I'm happy.
Right. And I think that when you do life so long together, you have to bring it back to the respect and compromise. And when I get in my head and it's like, I'm at the end of my rope, like I have no more, I have to have a sit down conversation with myself and remind myself that in a marriage, you have to respect the other person and you have to compromise.
Absolutely.
That one's hard for me.
It's hard also because we've grown up with the idea of maybe what marriage and life would look like. That other person has the same thing. Because I think about certain things that I do that I'm like, this is exactly what my mom and dad did.
Wow.
That doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just my experience. I can't assume that that's her experience or even what she wants.
Right. Yeah. And that to see you doing those things, right? Like if it's relived through your parents on a good, a positive or a negative note.
Of course, yeah.
She may have never even
experienced that
ever, right?
Ever.
And so like that could have been a whole shock
Yes.
for her, you know, especially when it gets like to the negative side of like how you were brought up in your household. And my mom, she went through the most toxic relationships. And so I had to really like learn how to have a healthy relationship.
Of course, yeah.
And I feel like I look now at some of the stuff I did in my first marriage and I'm like, I was batshit crazy. And if someone had never seen that before, they're like, she just like broke a window or, you know, like that's not okay.
Right. But if that's all you knew, and that's a part of ourselves that we have to forgive ourselves. It's hard for me to forgive myself because I feel like you should have known better. Why didn't you know better? Yeah. But then I have to tell myself, that's all you knew.
You were not taught any different.
You were not taught any. I have to forgive myself and then make a change, a consistent change going forward.
Yes. And it has to be consistent and conscious.
Yes.
Every day. Like that's not normal.
It's okay. Or even something like if she's doing something, I'm like, this is driving me crazy.
Right.
Is it really driving you crazy or would you just do it differently?
That one's so hard when it comes to parenting, especially with the dynamic, the sex dynamic of who is doing the primary role and then the other person comes in to help.
Yes.
And they do it differently and then you freak out.
Yeah. I experienced that a lot with our first pregnancy. So when Harper was born, she was born early, a NICU baby. She was in the NICU 12 days. We bring her home and my wife has all these rules. And I'm born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, grew up with a Southern grandmother, a Southern mother, grew up in an in-home daycare, took care of my brother. I'm like, I have thoughts. You have me here. I can help. I know this baby thing.
Yes.
But I also had to understand her body is telling her things.
Yeah.
Her body is communicating with our baby in a way that I don't understand.
That is so good for you to hone in on. I never even thought about that. And I am a controlling person. I'm not going to lie.
Me too.
But it is something where it's like, it's not that I don't think that you can't keep this baby alive.
Of course.
It's that like, this is what my body is telling me to do instinctively. And I have to act on that.
And I had to learn how to stand down.
Ooh.
Because I had to come to a realization her body's telling her something. And it will be times where she'd be like, well, no, I don't think she wants this. And I'm like, well, I think she wants this. She would be right because her body was telling her. And that wasn't a sign to fight about it. That wasn't a sign like, oh, well, good for you. You were right. No, we're not taking tally marks here. That was a sign for me to clue in and say, hey, we just have to listen to each other and compromise. But if she wants me to wash the bottles at a certain degree angle, let's just go on and do this thing.
So when you guys got home, you said she had rules.
Yes.
Did you know she was going to have those rules? Like, no, none of this was talked about.
No, I mean, we had talked about simple things like you talk about, okay, well, how long are we going to have her until we put her in daycare? Like the big things you talk about. It's the things where you talk about the rhythm. So when she gets home, she, of course, wants to breastfeed. Breastfeeding is a little tough because Harper was born tongue-tied. It's just all these things. And then she's colic. What do you do with a colic baby? I had never experienced a colic baby, neither had she. We both have different thoughts and ideas and opinions. And so it was all of these things kind of being thrown at us. A year of being parents, I want to move. So then we're talking about selling a home and purchasing another home. And what are the dynamics with that?
Right.
If we sell our home too early and the new home isn't finished, where do us plus a baby go?
Right.
It's just so many different things that were thrown at us immediately that we had to learn partnership.
So I didn't know Harper was tongue-tied, and that's a subject, and colic, that we have never touched on the OnlyMoms podcast. And I would love to talk about the tongue-tied situation. Did you get her tongue cut?
Yes, her tongue was cut in the NICU.
Okay.
And then it grew back.
Right. And that's pretty common.
So then she had to get another procedure done afterwards.
Okay.
So maybe she was like around 6 months. And then, of course, at the dentist, she's still tongue-tied.
Right.
But this girl speaks perfectly. She talks me down all day long. But yeah, it was a fight figuring out how to breastfeed. And then being a Black woman, we don't breastfeed at the same rates and levels, percentages as a lot of other people. So learning the thoughts and ideas and the theories behind that, the importance of my wife to learn how to breastfeed and for her and Harper to connect in that way, but to also not have too much mom guilt.
Yeah.
Because if it's not working out, fed is fed.
Yeah. And you've got to take the stress off and let it be what it is.
Exactly.
What are some pointers that you might have for moms that are trying to figure out how to breastfeed with a tongue-tied baby?
Ooh, the biggest thing would be to get help. It's okay to get help.
Yeah.
Because with a lot of us, we look to our mothers and our grandmothers, but historically, Black women have not breastfed their own children. So some of us don't have that immediate family connection.
Yeah.
It's okay to talk to nurses. It's okay to talk to doctors. It's okay to talk to doulas. There are a lot of information out there, but it's also like, it's a balance. Because you could go in on the deep end and then you become obsessed about it.
Right.
So the biggest thing is, like, just to take your time, learn the information, ask for help, and get the help if you can.
I always say that, you know, one thing that my pediatrician did that I didn't realize wasn't normal because it's my first time, they have a lactation consultant on staff. She has her own office.
I love that.
And when I booked our daughter's first appointment, they automatically booked me back to back with the lactation consultant. And, you know, I liked her, so that was a win-win. I think that you have to treat it like any other healthcare professional. You might not like them the first time, so don't, like, if you don't like them, try someone else. But I do think seeing them almost immediately, like when you would first take baby in, is important, even if you're not struggling. Because there are going to be ebbs and flows of your breastfeeding journey that, like, okay, why is my milk not coming in all the way? Or like, why can't I latch on this side? Or all of a sudden they only want to eat over here. You know, so much can happen. And I think that, again, like, not to information overload, but the awareness. And when you're out of the hospital too, because they tell you all of that shit right after you give birth. You don't remember any of it.
You don't remember any of it.
None.
No.
Especially.
I just had a baby.
Yeah. It sounds like the two of you both had pretty traumatic experiences with, I also had preeclampsia. I did not C-section, but that is like, you don't remember when you've gone through something like that.
No. And then your body, the way your body reacts, especially after a C-section. My wife had an emergency C-section. I had a scheduled C-section because I had a eruption in my placenta.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we scheduled it. It was supposed to be on Halloween, but we ended up having her on November 1st. But waking up after experiencing that or going into the room like, where's my body? What's going on with where's my baby? What's going on with my body? I look in the mirror. I still look 10 months pregnant. I thought I was going to wake up thin.
Right. You mean lipo was not included in this?
Like, wait.
Y'all put me under.
This could have been a 2-for-1. Come on.
Right.
Yes. So yeah, it's a lot that you don't remember. Thankfully, we, as well, the NICU, we had a lactation nurse as well, but a lot of people don't have that opportunity.
Were both of your girls in the NICU?
No, only Harper, only our oldest. Yes.
Okay. Thank God.
Thank God. Yeah, because the NICU, no one prepares you for having a baby and leaving the hospital without your baby.
Well, and then you can't breastfeed.
She could breastfeed in the NICU, but that was it. And she could pump and bring it there, but yeah.
But that's still a different experience.
It's different. So, and then she didn't get to hold Harper for 24 hours. So when I gave birth and she had Holland, she was like, yes, I get to hold my baby right after I had her. It was so sweet.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive into colic.
Okay.
Whew. They still say that there is no, like, they just don't know. Like, it's really survival of the fittest at that point.
Really, literally. So she was born early. They say in order to leave the NICU, the babies have to learn how to swallow appropriately. So we think it was some form of maybe her having trouble swallowing and the tongue tie. We go to our pediatrician. The pediatrician walks us through 15 different formulas that are supposed to help with colic.
Oh my God.
Now I wish that I had gotten her. I'm trying to think the doctors that if your back hurts, that you can go, not physical therapists, I can't think, but they have them for babies. And that's supposed to help relieve the baby because when the baby's in your belly, like they're all.
Yeah.
So of course, when they come out, that could contribute to some of their digestive issues, which could impact colic. So I wish I had researched that more and figured out more things I could do, like physical therapy with her.
Is it an osteotherapy or it's
chiropractor?
Oh yeah, so osteotherapy. And I am butchering that. I don't know if that's correct. I actually just did that for the first time, but it's almost a more gentle form of chiropractic. But I did take my daughter to a chiropractor.
Love that. Okay, yes. See, I went to a chiropractor when I was pregnant, but I didn't for our baby, and I wish I had done that.
Okay.
But we went through so many different formulas. Again, I'm from the South. I was like, if you don't put rice in that baby milk, why are we playing? Why are we going through all of this?
Yes.
But of course, my wife, like, she's like, new mom, no, I'm going to do what the pediatrician says. I'm going to buy the $70 formula that you can only get shipped in from Alaska.
Right.
Okay,
and
fine.
it won't even work, and you better accept it.
Oh my goodness. We got to the point where we tried 12 different formulas, and you know what worked?
What?
The rice in the milk. But you know who couldn't say I told you so? I don't say nothing.
We're still not saying
We're still not saying it. I'm going to make the bottle, but I ain't going to say nothing. Just know I know.
I love
we
that.
All know.
You did get a win in those.
Oh, that was a big win.
That was a big win.
You see, I still keep that win.
Yes, I love it. So I do advise. So when I went to the chiropractor and they were talking, and my daughter, she did not have colic, but she was dairy and soy intolerant. And so once we got through that and I went on the dairy-free, soy-free diet, she did like straighten her shit out. But the chiropractor told me that when the baby goes through the birth canal, the pressure on their ears and then they, get exposed to the world, sometimes that messes with them. And the chiropractor can help like readjust and figure that out to almost like relieve the pressure on their airways and ears, which will help colic. So definitely I have someone in Charlotte that I would recommend, and we'll totally link it in the notes. But if you have a chiropractor you would recommend in Atlanta, we would love to give our listeners that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I can send you on.
Yeah, but do your research. You want to make sure that they do actually practice on babies. Like, your baby is not going to be the first one. It is an additional specialty. So yeah, that's really my only advice for colic.
Man, and it's so many things that we're saying that's so helpful and needed. And a lot of these things aren't even covered by insurance.
Right.
That also makes me sad. It's like, this is all the research, but there are also programs out there that help new moms out. And this information is so good, but it is also a privilege to be able to go to some of these doctors and some of these specialties.
Yeah. Ugh. So you married the first girl that you dated.
Totally.
How is that, like, before you got married? Were you like, oh, shit, should I try a few others?
Like, should I?
Are we sure?
Am I sure I know how this thing works?
Right.
So I knew I was attracted to women growing up. I knew it because I knew, like, there were certain women I would look at and I'd be like, she just smells really good.
Yeah.
Like, I just kind of want to be close to her. And I'm like, I don't think this is a thought that everyone has about women. And so when I was in a relationship with my first boyfriend from like 17 to 21.
Wow.
So all my years I would have been out having a good time, trying things and experimenting. He took up all that time.
Right.
As soon as we break up, I transferred to a new job. And at that job, I see someone and I'm like, oh, if I were to ever date a woman, it would be that woman.
Really?
That was my first thought when I saw my wife. And so we did some on-the-job training together. And the on-the-job training then turned into off-the-job training. I'm kidding.
She's like, I'm going to train you how to do this.
No. So, but of course, when we first started dating, we were just kind of like breakup to makeup. We were all going through different things. So I did end up dating like a couple of other girls.
Which I think is probably good.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
You know, like we talked about the exploratory phase.
You have to
and
have
everyone needs a little bit of getting settled.
Absolutely. Figuring out what you like, what you don't like, personality-wise, everything-wise. So we come back together, and then once we locked in, we were just all the way locked in.
Right. So after that, like once you locked in, you were like, no doubt, no insecure, like full-blown, let's go.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that, you know, for other women that are in that phase of figuring it out, right? You know, like go and give yourself the space to explore.
Oh my goodness, yes. And especially since now, I mean, this was a million years ago, but now hopefully we're getting into more of a space where people are more understanding. At the time when I brought my wife around my family, it was just like World War III. They didn't know what was going on. Everybody wanted to send out a flag, send up help. But hopefully we're getting to spaces now where you can, I don't want to say experiment, but date who you want to date and enjoy what you enjoy without feeling guilty about it.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. In one of your conversations, you mentioned that you were in a state of mind like purchasing the house and whatnot, almost competing with your dad. And I wanted to ask, like, is that friendly competition? Like, you're a Leo. I get it. We are competitive. Like, I'm not a Leo, but it's Sag. Like, we're competitive. Or is that, like, was that daddy issues?
Ooh, I'm like, what girl doesn't have daddy issues?
Honestly, I have so many daddy issues. It's fine. Like, I've dealt with most of them. But
this is what therapy's for. So I realized this probably early on. I was in my early 20s, I think, and my dad would tell me, you're so competitive. And I never understood what he meant by that. Because I'm like, I don't even like sports. Like, what are you talking about? This is not a football field.
Right.
But what he meant is that I can be a little competitive in conversations and not just like, oh, I know more than you know. If you have something to say, I'm like, oh, I have something interesting to add to the conversation. Right. Can I add to the conversation? Like, that's just where my competitive is. But when I started thinking about purchasing a home, I wanted to purchase a home immediately. Like early 20s, we're talking about, it's 2008, 2009. Ooh, that may be two. It's actually 2012, excuse me. So I'm thinking like, this is the best time to purchase a home because at this age, my dad had already purchased 2. And at this home, my dad had already had a family and he already had XYZ. And I think when he raised me, I don't want to say he had gender norms in mind, but I want to say it was always the thought of, I'm raising you in my image. I want you to go out there and be a businesswoman. I want you to go out there and take care of your family. He would always tell me, you're so strong. You could do X, Y, Z. You're so smart. So I think him raising me in his image with kind of like his step-by-step of how he succeeded in life. When I got to a certain age, when it came to houses, I said, okay, he's already had 2 houses. Not even thinking he had a different president, a different job.
Oh,
like,
God.
Everything was different.
All the things.
But I in my head, I just had an idea of what is an appropriate age to get married, to have a baby, to buy a home. And it was just not even something I've even told him like, oh, I was competing with you. It just was a factor that was pushing me.
Yeah. It's hard, and I feel like just to raise children not with our own image of what they should be, but also too generationally, like in that generation was doing so many things. And I try to look back on how my mom mothered me, and she was so opinionated. The same thing, right? Like, you always win. You go do these things. You can't look like this to do this. And
so many thoughts.
Yeah, so many thoughts. And I know now she was just doing her best. No one had ever told them that was wrong.
Right.
But I definitely, when I hear my mom's voice in my head, like, have to stop myself from some of the things. I'm like, I can't let my children relive this.
Yes. That's the hardest thing to do. Because it's so wired in you that it's such a natural response.
Their voice that sounds like your voice.
That gives me chills because I think if people thought more of it, that yes, we're raising children. We think about the physical. I got to feed these kids. I got to make sure they leave the house. They're not ashy. No, I have to be careful what I talk to my kids. What I say, my voice becomes their inner voice, their consciousness. Their it impacts their decision making for the rest of their life. This is a lot that we are putting into our kids, and we have to be so intentional and thoughtful every single day with them.
Yeah, we talk about showing up every day.
Whew. That's the showing up. Yes.
You have to show for those kids every day, and they're not going to remember if we didn't have our makeup done, but they will remember that voice.
Yes.
And our opinions.
Because I still have my mom's voice. Even just thoughts of her roadmap was different than my roadmap. But how you're supposed to show up as a lady is completely different. I grew up, I talked way too much.
Yeah.
Everybody told me I talked too much. I had a smart mouth and I was way too opinionated. Now my kids, everybody tells me they talk too much and they're opinionated. But I don't say anything because I'm thinking I'm raising future CEOs. Yes, it's hard. It is hard. It is inconvenient. They do not listen to me because they have their own mind. They came to me perfect. I'm just kind of helping them navigate.
Yes. Giving them resources.
That's it.
And of course, I do get it's our job to align their moral compass and, educate them on different cultures and religions and right from wrong, but definitely less of the opinionated parenting. And I'm so glad that this generation of moms is realizing that. We're
totally. That's because if you think did your mom ever tell you oh yeah, I picked up a book to learn more about parenting? No, we're picking up books. We have podcasts, so many more resources.
It's crazy. out here, to be honest. So I want to talk to same-sex marriage and specifically to mom families, if they are getting ready for this next stage of becoming moms, right? What kind of pressures or challenges did you go through that you can make them aware of that, like, you were like, holy shit?
Oh, my goodness. Whew, we encountered a lot. The first step will be is understanding what state you live in and what laws are. That determines and impacts you're trying to conceive what method you would go with. Also understanding picking a good facility as well.
Okay.
Because we encountered a lot of microaggressions.
Wow.
Yeah. I remember specifically while my wife was getting prepped for her C-section and they were about to give her the spinal, the anesthesiologist, he looks over at me and he looks over at her and he's like, so what are y'all, sisters or something? Sir, you just told my wife that if she's not still, she could be paralyzed, but you're concerned if we're sisters? What does that have to do with anything?
This is none of your business.
That's not what you're here for right now.
Yeah.
Also, when the baby comes and you sign your birth certificate, you get your birth certificate. My wife had to sign as father. I had to sign as father when we gave birth. So then we had to go to, in Georgia, it's vital records to get a parent form to update the birth certificate. So ahead of that, while I was pregnant, I asked my midwife, can we just get the parent form in the hospital?
Yeah.
Let's kill two birds with one stone. Just get it so I don't have to redo everything and pay for it and go to the courthouse, all of that. She goes, is your marriage legal? I don't know people who go around and say they're married and it's not legal. I don't understand your question. It's been legal for some time.
And if you don't understand, why would anyone come at it from that direction?
Why wouldn't you just ask more questions? What do you mean by that?
Yes. Or like, let's walk through this together.
Yeah.
Like,
can you give me more information?
Right.
So it's so many microaggressions that we experience in the medical field, even the pushing of birth control. Sometimes I don't want to be an advocate. Sometimes I don't want to teach anyone about being gay and being a lesbian that day. I just want to get the vagina checked out and walked out. Why don't you want birth control? You're not on it? Why don't you want it?
On my chart, for the love of God. Like,
I'm
what?
married to a woman. The vag to vag is not going to give us a baby. We have in the house birth control. We're good.
Wow.
So then you kind of get the looks and then you start getting the notes.
Yeah.
They start writing real fast. And I'm like, oh yeah, I done taught you something interesting today.
Right. But it's like, if you could keep those notes on file so I don't get asked this shit again.
Oh my goodness.
Thanks.
Yes. And sometimes you just don't want to deal with that.
I get that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot.
It's a lot, especially when I was pregnant. So I'm like, I'm already big, hot, and heavy. I don't want to get political right now today.
Yeah. No, I mean, I had to tell them in the hospital, and mine was so much like less of an issue than yours would be every time, I imagine. But I said, like, guys need to document that I've said no to these specific vaccines. And if you ask me again,
absolutely,
I will change doctors.
No, that's a big deal.
Because I don't need to tell you why I do or don't. And it has people are going to ask, like, what vaccines did I not want to get? I did not want to get the COVID vaccine or the flu vaccine while I was pregnant. And it has nothing to do with politics or conspiracy. I have had girlfriends that were pregnant that have had stillbirths with both of those vaccines. Ooh. And so, like, personally, seeing them going through that, seeing someone go through that, I am healthy. The baby is appearing healthy. If there's not like a reason that I need this other than like it could protect the baby when they come out, like I'm just gonna say no. And you guys need to stop asking me.
I think people should be able to make their own personal choices. Like, it just has to be a personal choice. Everybody's research is, we all say, oh, we're doing our research, but like, we're not scientists in lab coats. We are all like reading information and the information that sticks with us. You should be allowed to make the best decision, absolutely, for your family. And
I understand things happen, especially during pregnancy.
Yeah.
Right? Where you might change your mind or this might reintroduce a conversation. But if shit has not happened, y'all leave me alone.
Man, it was really tough, especially when I was pregnant. There were a lot of Black women dying while giving birth. And then especially in Georgia, the rates went through the roof. So it's important to your point, are we talking about vaccines? Are we talking about, the point is advocacy and my voice. That's the biggest part of it. If I say I'm hurt, if I say something's going on, if I'm saying I'm bleeding, it's making sure that you have a doctor, midwife, that you have someone there to advocate for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you feel like you guys dealt with any pressures or weirdness when Harper started going to school?
Around like being a 2-mom family?
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, we haven't had too much. When the topic comes up, mostly when we start visiting the class, so when they start having birthdays, and the other kids, you start hearing them, and they're like, Harper, you have 2 moms? And Harper's like, yeah, I already told you I have 2 moms. and then they're like, okay, but you have 2 moms. So that's why I tell people, always ask me like, well, what are you telling your kids about 2 moms? I'm like, that's normal to them. What are you telling your kids about 2 moms and 2 dads, or grandma raising the babies, or stepfather, stepmom?
Yeah.
We gotta all do our part and teach our kids that everybody's different. This also talks about being able-bodied and people who are differently abled. Like, you have to have those conversations with your kids no matter what the situation is.
Yeah.
Because that kid I don't want to have that conversation with her at a birthday party. This is someone else's child.
Yes.
But she's looking at me, asking me, hey, y'all both mamas, what's up here?
And she's innocent, right? Like,
she's innocent.
It's not her fault that she doesn't know.
She's just observing.
I think that that's a great point because, I grew up in a single family household. Everyone was always asking where our dad is. And now my children I have 4 kids. I am a stepmom to 3. We have them full time.
Yeah.
And they feel like it is so rude when people ask them, and it is. And again, like, as a parent, teaching your children that it doesn't always look like a cookie cutter situation.
Right.
Because you don't know that child. I mean, my children lost their mom. And so every time it's asked like, oh, well, that's your stepmom, or you guys don't look the same. It's not the fault of the kid. It definitely is the education of the parents and where we need to take conversations with our kids as they get older and just old enough. It doesn't have to be in depth.
It does not have to be. You know what your child can understand.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I do think we need to put that responsibility back on the parents.
That was me growing up. My father's from Iceland, so I grew up in Kennesaw, Georgia, and it was your dad's white. Are you white? You don't look white. So what's up? I didn't even know that they were in an interracial relationship. That's just mom and dad to me.
Right.
Yeah.
This is regular.
It's just regular. So some of the, I don't want to call children conversations microaggressions, but some of these conversations start at their age.
Yes.
And that's the time when it's important to start like instilling in them that there are differences.
No, I agree with you. And I feel like as a country and the movement of LGBTQ, we have come a ways.
Yes. More to go, but yes.
Right.
Yes.
And that's where I want you to help me. Like, where's the more to go?
So the biggest thing the biggest feedback that I hear a lot is I don't understand this lesbian and gay lifestyle. I don't understand it. My thought is, if you don't understand it, you don't have to participate in it, but just don't actively not assist us. Because everyone, if we are upholding America, then everyone should be able to tap into what it is.
Right.
If we are still putting forth this image of family, providing, taking care of ourselves, there are trans people who aren't able to get their medicine. They are not able to get their needs. My wife and I, we had to do a second parent adoption where we each had to adopt the child we did not carry.
Wow.
So that means we had to stand in front of a judge, and a judge had to dictate how our family could look.
Already married.
Could
that judge have declined the adoption?
1,000%.
So then you are basing the next phase of your family off of how this person feels that day. That's crazy. And that's still, if you had another baby, you'd have to go do it again.
Yeah, for our protections. Yeah.
Okay.
1,000%. So no law or anything could ever come in and dictate that, or God forbid something happens to me. And is my wife able to decide where Holland, the daughter I carried, what happens to her? So we did a second parent or step parent adoption. And then we also had to do our will and estate.
Yeah.
And so we had to take extra precautions. And then that's money, and that's getting
That's
a
what
lawyer.
I was going to say, the finance behind that.
Yes.
Like, how much does that cost?
I want to say we ended up spending around $10,000 for all together.
Wow.
And it could have been more. Thankfully, I don't want to say thankfully. This was during COVID, and we also had a judge that was very understanding. I remember the judge saying, "You all are already a family." Ooh.
That's wonderful.
And she was like, "I'm just making things right as they should be." But we could have had a different judge who said, "Oh, we need someone to go in home and observe them."
Wow.
Just like an adoption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So what everyone can do is just understand more about LGBTQ plus issues and policies. There have been hundreds of anti-gay and anti-trans bills across the country that have been put forth. It's about voting locally and then voting in elections. But also it's just like, if this, I don't want to say lifestyle, but if who I love bothers you on a fundamental level, then, you just don't be in a same-sex relationship.
Right. Yeah, right. Like, I'm not asking you to do this.
I'm not asking you to join.
Right. Right. No, I don't want a third party.
No.
Thanks for your concern.
I just want to be equal. I just want equality and equity. That's it.
And I think from less of a legislation at how we're looking at things, like the lens as a friend, I didn't know that you guys have to go through all of those steps afterwards.
Yeah.
Right. And so just understanding as a friend, it's okay to be curious and to ask you if you're pregnant, what does that process look like? Is there any way I can help?
Yeah.
Do you need someone to drive you there? Do you need someone to watch the babies?
Yeah.
Right? There are ways to support the community, even if you're not, and just be a friend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's the questions that sometimes it's from a curiosity standpoint, and sometimes it's just not from a curiosity standpoint. But I think it's, if you're friends with someone, what I say is get to know that person. That one person isn't going to tell you about the whole alphabet of all of us, of all LGBTQ plus, all of it. One person isn't going to do that. It's knowing someone on a person-to-person level. And at the end of the day, we're part of this country too. We're very much a part of this country. So you can't ignore. It's just not right.
No.
Especially being Black. So I'm thinking of all of the legislation that has had to be here for me to be here.
Right. No, and it's all the hoops.
Yeah.
How many more can we put in front of you? Geez Louise.
If I experience something, I'm is it because I'm Black? Is it because I'm woman? Because I'm gay? What's going on?
I don't even know what area, what way are they attacking me from today?
Or it would be nice not to get stared at if I'm in the grocery store.
Yeah.
Because my wife, she's masculine presenting. So her assumptions based upon how she looks, how she moves around this world, she's always going to get looked at. Me, I can move around a little differently because you maybe won't know until I actually come out. But with masculine presenting women, it's a totally different game.
Yeah. I feel that. I feel for that. And I hope that as a country, we can just be better. And if you are not part of the community, just be a better person.
Yes. To everybody.
Just bottom line.
Just bottom.
We don't need to stare. We don't need to ask inappropriate questions.
No.
If you are truly curious, it should come from the heart, and someone can tell.
Yeah, they can absolutely tell.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest thing, is just opening up our ears more, listening more, doing our research, and learning how to be there for one another, to actually be a community as a whole.
I love that. And I know that you guys have some different resources that I've seen you talk about. I would love for you to send those to us so we can link them in the show notes for anyone that is interested.
Absolutely.
But okay, where can we find you? Where can we keep up with you?
I feel like I'm everywhere. Okay, so I am at Jamilla NQ on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere. I also have my own personal platform, Milla J, and that's on Instagram and TikTok as well. And we just love creating amazing content with our two little girls.
Oh, Jamilla, thank you so much for coming today. Cheers to you and all the things that you have overcome to live this beautiful life. And cheers to 10 years as a content creator.
Crazy.
These people have been watching for a while.
Everything. Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Of course.